Hello, hello. So excited to be here with you today. Let me introduce myself. Hello, I am Kimberly Bennett. I am an attorney, a brand strategist, a founder of K. Bennett Law, the IP and brand strategy law firm, helping CEOs and executive leader teams grow and scale their impact, as well as co-founder of Fidu, the legal tech platform, helping law firms sell, deliver, and scale subscription and flat fee legal services. And so I'm really excited to be here with you today to share my legal expertise and experience because I've spent almost 20 years as a practicing trademark brand and business strategy attorney, helping creative business owners like yourself protect, grow, and profit from the work that they build. While I'm no longer actively taking new clients into the firm, I continue to lead trainings like this one because I believe legal education should be empowering. It should not be overwhelming. I think it should be accessible, affordable, and widely available. And I want you to know today that there are legal services and legal professionals that can support you across all of your journey. Whether you're just starting out and you can afford only a couple of $1,000s for the year in total legal services, or you have grown and scaled past seven figures and you need a ton more legal services, there are legal professionals to support you across that entire journey. And my goal today is just to help you become more informed, more empowered, so you can understand how to apply legal in your business. And so, of course, as an attorney, I do have my darling disclaimers that I have to always be thinking about as I'm doing these presentations. So I'm going to remove myself so you can see it a little bit clearer. But let's just get this out the way. This presentation is educational and it's not legal advice. There's no attorney-client relationship created by attending this workshop. And so I highly encourage every single one of you to seek personalized legal advice to respond to your fact-specific business or legal questions that might arise out of this presentation or might have arisen before we even got started. I'm going to encourage you to think through the questions. We're going to talk through questions. So I don't want you to hold those in. I want you to go get the support. And trust me, there's support out there to help you regardless of where you're at in your business growth journey. All right, so I also love starting out all my presentations with a bit of a quote. And so why not start with Maya? You can't use up creativity. The more you use it, the more you have. The more you have it. You're here because you're creative, you're generous, you're ready to share what you know with others. And whether that means you're building courses, hosting retreats, designing templates, or leading community spaces, what you're building matters and it's worth protecting. And so what I want you to remember is that you are here to build a business. And I want you fundamentally to always have this understanding as you're building the business, because I think it's something that people, when they start a business, just don't think about because they just get going, is that proactive legal strategy is the key to your business growth. Right now, probably the majority of you watching are leveraging reactive legal strategy. That means if an issue pops up, you respond to it. You finally have a client that is willing to pay you that that 4-figure a month membership fee, or that your first one that's going to give you your first sell your first $27 product, whatever it looks like. Now you're going to get your terms. Now you're going to get your privacy policy. Now you're going to finally get that client agreement, and it's waiting to when you finally need it to do it. But that's positive because you're getting money, that client's happy. But many times people do it when there's an issue, when they get a cease and desist letter, when a client doesn't want to pay a bill that's been late, when they have an issue with a vendor. All of that is an example of reactive legal services. And it's not that you're going to eliminate reactive services. We live in reality. But proactive legal is the foundation to successful growth. Right? Because you're not operating in fear, you're focused on growth. It's because you're not just waiting for things to go wrong. You're building from a solid foundation from the start so you can scale with clarity and not chaos. You're thinking about legal not as a barrier, but as a tool that you should be using over and over again and applying in everything that you do. And so with that understanding, I want you to always remember, what are the questions that are popping up in your brain at any point when you're building your business, right? But today we're in this workshop. You have questions. I'm going to go through some quick Q&A in a bit, but I want you to jot down what are your questions right now, because I don't want you to let those go. I really want you to hopefully get some high-level thoughts about what you need to do responding to that particular question based off of this presentation. But of course, I couldn't answer every question. I couldn't anticipate everything that would pop up, and we have such limited time that I try to hit the high notes, right? But I want you to write it down because, Maybe that question relates to something that you've been staying up late at night avoiding responding to. Maybe you've been Googling it. Maybe you've been using ChatGPT, right? Maybe that question's about your website or your contracts or your trademarks. Or maybe you're just feeling like something is missing. The thing is, you're not behind, you're not alone, and you don't need to be a legal expert to figure out what your next step is. You just need to know what matters most and where to get the help when you need it. And that's our goal today, is to help you be more informed so you can take 1% action to move the needle, so that you can make a decision on what your next best step for your business and what the legal strategy to implement to help you get there. So our focus today is going to kind of go through three parts. Let me bring myself back up so we can make this a conversation. All right. So my focus today is going to do 5 legal principles, and kind of talk about these principles as it relates to how you run and operate your business on a day-to-day. High-level things I want you to be thinking about. Next, we'll go through some common questions. Like I said, I couldn't get through them all, so I tried to pick 10 that kind of cover some of the things that I see as you're growing, scaling, that I've seen in my almost 20 years of practicing law, that I think it would be helpful whether you're just starting out or if you're a little bit down the line. So maybe some of the things won't apply to you, but keep them at the back of your head so that you know in the future that it's something for you to consider. And then finally, we'll go to your next action. I believe in taking 1% incremental action to move the needle, right? You can get overwhelmed if you're taking big strides every moment. But if you do that incremental momentum, even with legal, you will get to a place where you feel comfortable and confident, and you have the clarity to continue to build your business. So that's how we're operating. That's how we're operating today. All right. So because we're going to kick off with the 5 principles, I want to kind of start with this frame of reference. I want you to think about what it's like to elevate your legal strategy in your business by leveraging these five principles. But to do that, I need you to implement these principles all the time, every single day when you're running your business, just the day-to-day, mundane, right? I want you to remember these principles every time you're around that virtual or that real table workshopping like you see in the picture, right? Discussing your next business move, your next launch, your next hire, your next offer, whatever is on the table to discuss about your business. I want you to be thinking about these 5 principles because you want to incorporate them into the discussion so that you can be more informed. You can start identifying possible opportunities or issues that could arise and get proactive support from the legal professional that you have chosen to help you along your growth journey. All right. And of course, your legal professional is going to give you other ones to think about. And these are going to adjust and shift as you grow your business because they'll get more nuanced. They'll be more dialed into your actual business. But these are high level to get you going. It's not the end. It's the start so that you can start bringing in legal strategy into your business, which you'll see in a second is one of the principles. All right. Principle number 1 is to protect your assets. You bring a lot to your business personally and professionally. Your personal assets, like your saving, your home, your retirement, like the money in your account, right? That's a personal asset. That shouldn't be at risk because you start a business, right? That shouldn't be at risk. And when you build a business, you want to protect the assets that are in that business too. Now, you don't want your personal assets to pay for your business debt, and you don't want your business debt to pay for your personal assets if you're commingling things, right? So when you're building a business, the type of assets that you're creating are, of course, your content, the brand and the equity around the brand that you're building. Also the systems, the tech tools or the technology hardware that you have, like a computer, all the laptops that everyone has, right? Client data, revenue streams, community that you're building, operations, your secret sauce, all of that, those are real valuable parts of your business. And they deserve protection. So if you don't treat them like assets, then it becomes easy for others to copy, to devalue, to manipulate, to steal, to disrupt what you have built. So protecting them really looks like, 1, separating personal and financial and business finances, right? Making sure that's separate so it's clear that the business runs in one way and your personal does not interact. We don't run to the grocery store with our business or our business card because that wouldn't make sense unless there was a specific reason that you document, you have a receipt for, you have an expense policy for, right? To make sure you're not commingling in ways, particularly in the US, that would impact your ability to grow and scale. And let me say this too, because I know we're an international group and I am a US based attorney. I operate out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I do IP work with my legal clients. And that means I can support clients across the United States on trademark, or any other IP issues, trademark, copyright, helping them around brand strategy as they grow and scale their business. And that's what I've done in my career, in addition to some other areas of the law. But because I'm licensed in the United States, I can't then also support clients in the UK or in other jurisdictions like Australia or Canada. I will always engage a local counsel to support my client in the United States that needs to do work, or work with a vendor, get a trademark in the United Kingdom or in Australia or in any other jurisdictions outside the United States. So the same thing will apply for you, regardless of where you're at. You're always going to need a local attorney to support you with your local needs. And then if you have a global business that is building assets that are in different locations, and you want to think about how you protect those assets in those different locations, and you might need to engage local counsel to help that. Just as a one aside, as we're kind of getting into the conversation. Okay, so you separate your finances, you create the right legal structure. So typically that means forming a certain type of business. In the United States, we have a range of business types that you can form. You might have heard of things like limited liability, company, a partnership. You can have corporations. Every country has a corporation, but there are business structures that you create to separate your business and your personal, to be clear on what the assets are, and that you're putting your legal protections in place so that what your intellectual property is, and you can grow and scale that. You know that you're protecting all of your operations. You know that you're protecting all of your relationships, right? Because the protecting of assets is not simply about reducing risk. It's also about ownership, control, and long-term value. Because today you're starting out, you're growing, you're scaling, you're thinking about all the new products or services that you're going to bring to market, that new course, that new workshop, the new in-person events, right? That new memberships that you're launching, all amazing things. But at some point, we all need to stop working. So something needs to happen with those assets. You can either close down your business, you can sell your business, someone can acquire pieces of your business. But to protect those assets and to make them valuable long term, we need to put the right protections in place today and ongoing, so that you can make strategic decisions down the road about how you want to leverage those assets when it's time to retire, when it's time to move on to the next opportunity, the next venture, or when it's time to walk away. All right, next principle that we're going to get to then is documenting everything. I know this isn't new, but I want you to think about it, right? I want you to think every single thing you do in your business should be documented. If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist, right? And there are nuances to documentation. As you grow and scale and you make more money, you're going to hear your legal advisor probably give you different strategies on how to document, what to document, the ways to document, what is proper and improper documentation, right? But the fact of the matter is, you want to document all the relationships that you have, all the opportunities that you have, so that verbal promises, email chats, text threads, they're not the foundation of your business. Because if something goes awry, if something goes sideways, then that's when the stuff hits the fan, right? So documentation brings clarity, it creates structure, it sets expectations for everyone involved. And that's what you want to think about. Documentation, you should understand it. If you don't understand it, it's not a good document. There's plenty of legal professionals who work hard to draft contracts that are easy to understand. And it's a movement in legal. So if you find a contract so hard to understand and you just sign it, you don't necessarily know what you're giving up. So it should be in using terms that are easily for everyone to digest who has to live by those terms. Because everything you sign, you're essentially saying you're obligating yourself and or your business to those terms. One tip I do want to mention here, since we're talking about documenting, is as you're growing your business, you of course know legal advice, but when you document, when you sign on behalf of your company, the way to sign on behalf of your company properly is to have your name, your title, and the company name, so that when you are signing and you're agreeing to a vendor agreement, hiring a contractor, making a payment on something, getting that business credit card, whatever, you are doing it as a representative of your business, not on your individual capacity, right? Because if you sign any document, even if it's a business document, just as your name, if I signed it just as Kimberly Bennett and I was signing up for a software program for my business, well, if I stopped paying it and there was $1,000 bill due, I would be responsible for it as a personal debt and not my business, right? There's, ways to kind of manage through that, but that's legal expense. So do things the first way, document everything, sign it properly, and then you can move forward with more confidence and more clarity, and the protections in place to protect your assets and to document so you can set expectations in your relationship. Whether that's a student, guest teachers, collaborators, independent contractors, you need these clear agreements because it shows you who's responsible for what. And it doesn't mean that they need to be overly arduous. It doesn't have to have all the legal jargon like I was saying before. It just means it needs to set clarity down on what the relationship is, what the expectations are, what happens if things terminate. And lawyers will give you certain terms that you should have inside of your agreements. I always, recommend, instead of going on Google or ChatGPT and pulling something down, go find legal professionals in your jurisdiction who have template shops, right? One example is Legal Mika Law Library. She is a practicing attorney, but has a separate business that sells template contracts that are attorney drafted. That is a much better starting place if your legal funds are limited, to help you start documenting everything with a better foundation to start with. You can't mitigate all risk, but you can be smart and mitigate some of the risk by getting the right foundational documents in place and by documenting everything. So that's just one additional tip to be thinking about as we're growing and scaling. All right, next principle is managing your financial risk, because legal risk is financial risk. Every refund you didn't plan for, every client disagreement, every chargeback, every tax issue, that's money out the door. Legal clarity really does protect your revenue. It also helps grow your revenue if you do it right. It helps you create smoother systems around payment plans, course access, cancellation policies, refund terms, all the things that we know we're thinking about all the time that makes us stressed out sometimes too, because we're growing and scaling fast and we want to bring people into our businesses and help them grow and unlock something in their life that they didn't think was possible. Right? But that's the reality. And so the more confident you are in how your business is structured, particularly around your finances, right? It's easier for you to grow without second guessing every decision. Legal is not just about protection. It really is part of your financial strategy for you to not just be compliant, but for you also to grow at scale with ease. Okay, let's go to the next one. A principle that we talked about earlier that is focused on growth, but I want to just get down to this, this way of thinking that I want you to always incorporate when you're at that round table. That legal strategy is essential. If you are not asking what's the legal strategy here when you're thinking about that next offer, that launch, that business decision, you're not setting yourself up for the level of success you can really achieve if you put those protections and that mindset in place. It doesn't mean you're going to act on everything, but it means you're putting it into the conversation. Right? Legal shouldn't just show up when something breaks. It shouldn't just show up in fires. It should be part of how you build from day one. Just like your content, your curriculum, all the things as you're planning, legal strategy needs the same thing. So that means using the contracts that support growth. That means protecting your IP. That means thinking ahead about maybe you're going to grow this thing and you're going to license it to someone. You're going to add collaborators. You're going to do, summits, right? What does that mean for you? So that you can align all your systems around your long-term goals and make those long-term goals aligned with what keeps you compliant, what keeps you proactive, and what allows for you to grow and scale with confidence. Because legal strategy, like I said, doesn't just put out fires at all. It really does help you bring your business to the next level. It protects your peace, but as you grow your business, the one thing you cannot get back if you destroy is your reputation, right? And so legal strategy allows for you to really think through, will this impact my reputation? Am I signing something that I know I can't fulfill? Next, and the final principle I want you to always be thinking about, and I know it's probably not news to you, but prevention is cheaper than the cure, and that's true in legal. Proactive legal is always less expensive than reactive legal. If you're coming to legal when something breaks, it's going to be super expensive. That means the stereotypical maybe outdated traditional lawyer uses the billable hour. Now we have tons of lawyers who don't do that anymore. That's who I will chat with you about on who you can look for to help you build your businesses. But if you go to a lawyer and you need something immediately, you're gonna pick up the phone, you're gonna get referrals. They might refer you to firms that are high hourly rates, to firms that may not actually respond to the issue that you need, to firms that are now giving you emergency rate, resource intensive rate, and having to maybe what could have been prevented with a quick letter might now have to be a court filing. And it just raises up the costs exponentially. So the more you can bring in proactive, early legal into your business, into how you operate, the more impactful it will be. And the more it will not impact negatively your bottom line. So that's what you really want to be thinking about. Using legal proactively to, of course, reduce the cost, but to also allow for it to grow your business. So I know I'm sounding like a broken record because that's the key, right? These 5 principles are interconnected, but it's how you move from stuck to sustainable, from chaos to consistency. It's really leveraging all 5 every single time you're growing and scaling your business. So with that, now that we've kind of covered those 5, I kind of want to move from the core principles to talk through some of the real questions that I hear all the time from creators, that I've heard over my years of growing and scaling and supporting entrepreneurs who are growing businesses like you, and even heck like me. So as you can see here on the screen, I am also an entrepreneur who is teaching people in my field. In my case, I teach lawyers what I have done, which was grow and scale a subscription and flat fee law firm. And so I understand what it is to create and what it is to create impact in your industry, what it is to build content and systems and communities around what you're trying to grow and scale. And so the questions that we're going to go through, these top 10 questions, or 10, maybe not top 10, but 10 of the questions that come up for creators across, whether they're creating courses, whether they're launching a membership, whether they're hosting workshops, whether they're doing in-person or virtual live events. All people that are building a brand around what they're teaching, these are questions that come up. And as you listen, I want you to think back to that legal question that I had you write down earlier or jot down earlier. I want you to think back to that question and see, if any of the questions that pop up relate to it. And if not, did it, like maybe pique interest in something else that you should be considering, right? Because the goal of this is for you to start being able to identify that there might be an issue so that you can go seek out support. You're not meant to be the expert here, but we want to help you identify, because that makes you a more informed, a more influential, and truly, like I said, a more impactful business owner, because you're not going to be you're not going to miss something that might really impact your business. You're not going to miss that opportunity that can take you to the next level. You're going to have the things in place as best as you can. Not every single thing. We're not seeking perfection here, but you're going to have the ability to really be more strategic as you grow and scale. Like I said, not about learning legal jargon. It's really just about identifying issues to help you spot them so you know when it's time to ask. All right? Y'all with me? All right, so let's get started. Let's kind of start going through the questions. All right. So these are, like I said, some questions that pop up that I want you to be thinking about. Does this apply to you? Is this something that you've been thinking of, right? Have you taken the next step? If not, it's okay. Jot it down as maybe your next 1% action that you can do. All right, so first question, is your course or brand name available for you to use, right? Because here's the thing, you're starting this business, you started the business, you are going out in the market and you're selling something under a brand name, right? Under Kim's Trainings. Now, I probably wouldn't use that one for many reasons in trademark law, but let's just call it that, right? Or better yet, I'll use a real life one. I decided I want to build the next super-powered computer, and I'm going to call it Apples. Not Apple, because we have Apple Computer. I'm going to call it Apples. And I want to know, okay, great. Can I use this brand name to sell computers, right? This brand name Apples. At the point you are thinking about going to market with a brand name, you need to ask yourself, is it actually available for me to use it? And what does available mean? It doesn't mean that can you use it and market it without someone saying, hey, that's my name. You're infringing on the name that I own, that I've registered, and now you have to stop using it and maybe even pay me, right? So what should you consider before naming your course, your retreat, or your membership? If you're about to launch something new, don't fall in love with the name before you check if it's available for you to use. Because a strong name that you use, i.e. your trademark, right? The thing that you want to be known for helps you build brand equity, brand identity, distinguishes your brand from the next brand. But if it's a name that's already in use, it could create confusion with those that are looking to buy. So let's use my Apples versus Apple example. If I created Apple's computer, would you be confused if it's Apple, that Apple computer, or Apple's my new Apple computer? If it would confuse the consumer, they're not sure, they might buy one thinking it's the other, more than likely that's not going to fly. And you don't want to be 10, 20, 30 website, marketing materials, 5 launches in when you realize you can't use that name. And trust me, it happens a lot. right? And as trademark attorneys will tell you, you've had to tell clients you can't use a name. I've told clients it a lot because sometimes you're not looking to register a name, but you're looking to use the name. So even if you're not looking to register the trademark, before you go out to market launching and selling things, you need to see if the name is available, right? Because if it isn't, you can be causing unnecessary liability for your business, unnecessary headache and stress for yourself, and if you have a team, for your team, and you're just wasting time and energy where you can really provide a more strategic way of moving forward with a name that you can actually use. So what do? Right? You start with the basic search, right? Of course, these are times when you do hire a trademark attorney to help you understand if your name could be used. But if you're like, I just want to know if I can use it, this is not going to be the end all be all. But at least do an initial search on the internet. Search Google, search social platforms, search domain names, right? Then go deeper. If you're building something long term, right? If you have the knowledge, yes, so you can search these various platforms. One thing to know, if you are based outside the United States and you need to file inside of the United States for a trademark, you will need to engage an attorney more than likely if you're not a citizen of the United States. There's just different laws that have passed, and that might also hold true for you in other countries. If you need to file, if you're in the United States, you want to file in UK, or if in UK, you want to file in Australia, right? You more than likely would want to hire an attorney for many reasons, because it's just laws that you're not maybe familiar with, and there's a process and more of a strategic, bigger process that you can leverage to file in multiple jurisdictions at once. But essentially, if you're trying to choose a name, the first thing you want to do is, can I use it? And you want to make sure it's not like something that's on the market that's selling something similar or confusingly similar to what you do, something related. If it is, it's likely that you're not going to be able to use it. But that's when it's time to go get support, because you don't want to start using it and then get that dreadful cease and desist letter, because that's what's going to happen if you do. Okay. So if you don't intend to file it, that's okay. If you don't intend to get the trademark application, that's okay. You still need to understand, can you use the name? Right? Because this can destroy your business permanently. And maybe it doesn't happen on year 1, year 2, it could happen year 10, right? And all that revenue, all the profit you made off of someone else's brand might have to get paid back. And that would be tough, right? So we don't want to do that. We want to be proactive. And so the first thing you want to ask yourself is, can I actually use this name? Can I use it? Do a quick search to see if something looks like it, and then go get additional support to go deeper. Because if you want to commit to that name, if you're selling anything on it, you should at least know. And there are stages to that process that you can engage an attorney to at least answer the question, can you use the name? Next question. Related, because I get this question a lot. When can you use the TM or the R and the circle symbols, right? When can you use these two symbols? So I'm going to talk as a US based attorney. So I'm always answering questions, and I'm just going to always preface this as a US based attorney based off of US law. There are similar things in other jurisdictions. I would recommend you have what the US is. A lot of the laws tend to start modeling each other over time. So if it's not exactly like what I'm saying, it's going to be a variation, but principles are probably similar. But you definitely want to look in your local jurisdiction to see if the nuance around the law for these particular topics. But when can you use the TM or an R in the circle, right? So the TM, it stands for trademark. The R in the circle stands for registered trademark, and that's probably going to give you a hint. So I created an additional slide specifically about this because we get this question a lot. And so TMs are for unregistered trademarks, right? It really is just giving notice, right? It's telling someone that you're claiming that's a brand name, but it's not federally registered in the United States. That's how we refer to it, right? It's not registered in the authority and the agency in your country or in your locale that registers trademarks, right? Then the R in the circle is specifically for registered trademarks. So if your trademark is not registered, you have not paid the USPTO or paid, if you've done, Madrid, if you haven't paid money to a government agency, right? And usually also an attorney or some type of filing service to register your trademark, you should not be using the R in a circle, because it could impact your application moving forward. In fact, it will, right? Because those trademark attorneys do go out and search for, examples of how you're actually using your trademark in practice. So make sure you don't use the R until you get that official registration. But once you do, you're off and running, you can use it. All right. Next question I get a lot is, can you protect your signature method or framework, right? So I get it. I teach a signature method or framework, right? Like, you want to know, can I protect it? And you cannot, hear me out, cannot protect an idea. So let's use the idea of selling soda, right? Like, I can't protect this like idea of selling soda, or the idea that I'm going to coach on mindset, or I'm going to coach on doing a particular, style. Now, if it's your signature style, you might be able to protect the signature style if it's not a common way of describing something, but the name of it, I should say specifically. But you cannot protect an idea, but you can protect the unique expression of that idea. So if it's like original content, your diagrams, your written materials, your video lessons, more, you might be able to protect that, right? And that might fall under copyright right protection. Some of the naming might fall under trademark mark protection. Maybe if you invented something, it could be under a patent protection, right? There are different ways to think about what the protection is. So maybe you can protect your signature method or framework depending on how you're using it, but not the idea of it, but the manifestation, the actual development of real materials, tangible outputs from it. And then you want to create a strategy on what to protect and how to protect it. The fun fact about copyright in particular, when you create something, so my presentation that we have here today, I've created it, it's ready to go. It has attached copyright protection at the point of creation. At the point of you using a trademark, you actually have common law protections at the point of using it. It's just the strength of protection increases with trademarks when you actually formally register it, and it's the highest strength in the United States when it's federally with the USPTO, which is our governing agency for trademarks and patents. And for copyrights, you get additional statutory protections that entitle you to damages if someone uses something improperly of yours if you register it. While you might have some protections initially, you don't get the kit and caboodle of the law without actually having formal registration. But that's a strategy. You're not always going to be able to obtain copyright. Sometimes it requires multiple pieces of things. It just means that you want to invoke strategy to see what you protect, when you protect it, why you're protecting it, and what's the top priority based off of your business goals. All right, next question I get a lot. Collaboration. How are you collaborating with people? Your bestie, you're both in the same industry, you're sharing information, you're doing retreats together, you're running you're sharing coaching clients, and you coach in their community once in a while. How do you protect the content that you create, right? What rights do you have over your videos, your templates, the downloads that you create? If you created it, like I said, you likely own a copyright to it. But here's the catch. Copyright is only as strong as the protections that you've surrounded it with. So for example, if someone else helped you create that content, or if you're working with contractors, and I'll get this in a second, right? Collaborators, co-creators, you need agreements that confirm ownership. Right? Because when you collaborate with somebody and they're bringing something to the table, you're bringing something to the table, and you're kind of combining and creating, say, one presentation, who owns what? Can that other person reuse it in a different setting? Can they not reuse it? Just because you see someone present something in a presentation, can you take it and use it? Unlikely. Now, the idea, right? The ideas are free for everyone to use ideas, but the way it was created, the way it was presented, the nuance that makes it theirs, you don't want to copy that, because that can lead to obligations. But you want to have an understanding of who owns what, so that if you want to redo it in another setting, there won't be conflict down the line. That's where contracts come in. That's where being clear on who owns what, if it's co-owned or not. That's why putting it in writing is so important, because solid agreements allow for you to understand at the outset who gets what, who owns what, who keeps what. There are IP provisions in contracts. There are non-disclosure provisions in contracts. There are copyright provisions in contracts. There are who owns, I'm an independent contractor in a contract provisions to say I own things even if you paid me to do it. Which leads me to my next question that I get a lot. What about are you hiring a team? Well, how do you protect your content when your team is helping you develop it? So in the context of a collaborator, they're not on your team. They don't work for you, collaborator, right? They are just, you were doing something collaboratively. You might be coming together to do something. Well, the same applies. And I wanted to do these side by side because a lot of times we don't see people connect that dot, right? That Collaborators need agreements, and so do your team members, particularly in early stage businesses that hire independent contractors. And again, I'm going to talk again for the US. So this is the caveat. Every country really does have different rules around employment law. And so you do need to understand your local jurisdiction's employment law. US and Canada have very different employment laws, and I know that because I used to work for an organization where I had Canadian departments that I supported, as well as US lines of businesses that I supported. So I had to learn those nuances, and that exists around the world. So with hiring a team, one of the things you want to be thinking about, US in particular, but generally speaking, if you hire an independent contractor, do you have an agreement in place to make sure that the thing that they created for you that you own? So when you hire a VA, a business manager, integrator, a designer, a video editor, they're editing that video, they're creating that process, they're creating that Canva file, right? They're organizing your back end, they're looking at all of your frameworks and all those things that people don't see unless they work for you. Are you protecting that? The only way you can protect it with an independent contractor is with an agreement. Because here's the deal. If you don't have an agreement, then they are the creator of it and then they own it. And the way that you have to get ownership back is through agreement and through an assignment and through the exchange of value. And so you really want to make sure, an exchange of value means money, right? Like you want to make sure that that you have agreements in place, particularly for independent contractors, but also for employees, because maybe independent contractors aren't a norm, but there are rules around employees. So does what that employee create automatically go to you as the business owner? It might in many circumstances, but these laws that impact your understanding of who owns what is federally in the United States, then it's state in the United States you have to look at, and then it's local. So in your country, you want to think through what is like the top law of the land. How does it relate to employment, right? Then what's the law in the province or the specific town that I live in or state that I live in? And then maybe what's the actual local municipality, the where my neighborhood is that might have their own specific rules and regulations. This is a lot of legal things to be thinking about. And what you don't want to say is you're going to have to know the law about employment law. You're not. But when you hire a team, what I want you to think about is ping, legal issue, content, IP issue, I need to get support. How can I get support that matches where my business is at? Okay. Next question that I get a lot is, what if someone is copying my work? Unfortunately, like everything in business, it's not if, it's a when, right? And so if this happens, particularly because all of us here, we are training others. And so when you train others on things that you do, sometimes you find that sometimes people are using a little bit of your content in ways that you didn't expect. So if someone is copying your course, your content, or your brand, what can you actually do about it? First, you got to take a breather and don't react, haphazard. Don't just react off the cuff. Gather the facts is the second thing you want to do, because infringement does happen. You want to make sure they're actually infringing, but you want to get immediate support. This is the time to get support. Don't go it alone, because if you want to identify, are they copying? Were you the first one to create it? Were they the first one to create it? There are things to consider before you go and accuse, but that's why you want to do the research ahead of time. Right? You're always going to find this very personal, but you do have options. The first starts with documentation, keeping records, taking screenshots, tracking dates, and then from there decide if it's worth pursuing, and then maybe you're going to do a takedown notice. Maybe you're going to get legal help to support you. But when you feel like infringement is happening, you want to understand where it's coming from, what the possibilities are. But not every infringement requires a lawsuit, but every infringement does deserve to be taken seriously. So if you get a letter in the mail from someone that's claiming you're using, for example, a photo from offline that you thought you had ability to use it because it was on Google, and it turns out actually it's not, and you're being sued for something, you need to get support, because those things happen, right? And so I want you to always be thinking about, if someone's copying your work, take a breather and then gather the data, and then set up a strategy call and ask the question so you can help make the next informed decision, right? Or at least make the decision on, okay, what's my next step? Okay. All right. Next question. How can others teach your content? So, you are training people to do to build businesses, right? And you want that they might then go train other people. Do you want them to teach your content? Do you want them to share your framework? Do you want them to share your method? There's a way to do that, and they're under the law. Again, talking US law, there are frameworks to do this. There's a licensing framework, there's franchise framework. They are very fact specific. Franchises has a ton of regulation. You want to be careful not to get yourself caught up in that. But yes, you can do it. It might be a great way to grow and scale your business. I've worked with entrepreneurs who look to get their businesses from just a framework they coach and train other people on to something they coach and train coaches to coach and train other people on. So that might be something you want to do. Is that part of your legal strategy? If it is, then you need to think through licensing. You need to think through franchising. You need to think through how to make sure you don't cross the line if you want to do one or you don't want to do the other. But those are considerations. It is powerful. It can lead to money, but it does create a lot of compliance and a lot of regulation. And so if you're thinking, I want to train others to do what I do, well, get support, develop the strategy, because it absolutely is possible. All right. Next question. How do you manage risks with running a retreat or running a workshop, right? Particularly in-person live ones, right? Because I'm saying retreat as I'm thinking in-person live, not like our virtual retreats like we had during the COVID years, right? But, what contracts or documents should you have in place really is what we're thinking about here, right? So there are going to be a range, depending on what you're doing, are going to be are going to help you identify what those agreements are going to be. But outside of protecting your IP and things like that, right, and making sure you're getting paid on time by the people with their payments, you're going to have a participant agreement that probably might have the payment terms in there, particularly if it's a retreat, particularly if it's a very expensive in-person retreat or workshop, right? Not that inexpensive makes it worse, but makes it like you shouldn't do it. But when you're on the hook and you might have to pay another vendor, you need to have recourse, right? Maybe it's a liability waiver, because if there's physical activity, could someone get hurt? What about your vendor agreements, right? These are certain types of things that you might want to have in place when you are doing in-person and live events. In addition, insurance, right? You need to read the agreements with your venue, because the venue might require you to have business insurance. I'm not even going to say might, I'm sure, at least in the US, you have a venue with an event, more than likely they're going to require you to have some type of business insurance to indemnify them, to protect them in the event someone gets hurt on their property that's at your event. Right? It's, if there's any type of risk, you want to be thinking about it. There's so many moving parts to events and retreats, but you do want to be thinking about from the start of the sale to the completion of the event, what are the things that can possibly go awry? And do you have terms in your agreement, in your waivers, in all the videographing that you're doing so you can use those pictures in marketing later? Have you gotten the things necessary for you to be able to deliver on that event and then to market about that event before and after? That's what you want to be thinking about, and those are some of the things that you want to consider as you grow and scale. It's really about setting up an experience that is both safe and successful. And the safe part is, if something goes awry, you can use your insurance to deal with that issue, and successful so that you can then showcase all the wonderful things that happen by marketing that later. But those do require agreements or terms inside of your agreements to make sure you can successfully do that in a compliant manner. Next question, what do you need to know about selling globally? Well, I think this is a great question because this is a global summit. You need to be thinking about where you are today and where you're going to go. This might not be an immediate question, but as you grow, if you have some of your customers that are based outside of your country, at what point does that potentially raise your potential exposure to being sued in that country? So you live in the UK, but you serve clients in the US, and enough clients that could it lead to litigation inside the US that you didn't anticipate, right? How do you manage that? Through agreements, in your agreement with your clients. In the United States, we would call it a choice of law provision. We would say a venue provision. Choice of law provision says what law applies when you sue me. Choice of venue is, where can you sue me at? And then how you sue me, right? Again, sometimes we don't like to think about the bad side, but we need to plan for the what ifs, the bad thing to happen as well as the good, so we can protect and set expectations ahead when we're clear-minded to see how we want to move through things, right? So whether your students or customers in other countries, you want to remember that every country has its own standards, especially around taxes, particularly around privacy, right? My folks in UK and EU with GDPR, right? consumer protection and online payments, because those things are rapidly changing. And I'll say in the US, sometimes we are slower in the US to change, particularly around some of the privacy pieces. And so while the industries may move, the laws might be different. And if you have laws in different countries that are different, you have to decide how are you going to operate your business? How can you best protect yourself? And so early on, you might have a very limited, very focused way of doing it. But as you grow and scale, that might look like making sure your website terms and policies address international customers, making sure you're clear on where people can sue you at, for example. And then as you grow and scale, maybe localizing maybe those terms, those policies and things and whatnot to the locality so that you can protect your business. But that is where interesting business structures come in. That's when you see somebody has a business operating in United States, but their home HQ is in Germany, right? Those things happen because they want to structure themselves to maximize profit and minimize liability. But those are all about engaging legal strategy early, because you might not be there today, but you want to put the bricks in place to slowly get there so that when you're ready, you can fully execute and go forward with ease, or as much ease as possible. And then final question, when should you get legal support? And this is, well, lawyers tell me all the things I can't do. Okay, well, when should I get legal support? So here's the thing I'm going to say. When legal questions kind of come up that are slowing you down, keeping you up at night, preventing you from closing that next deal, preventing you from hiring that next team member, it doesn't mean that you need a full-time lawyer. In fact, likely if you're under 7 figures, you're not going to need a full-time lawyer. And even past that 7-figure mark, it's going to take maybe a little bit to need a full-time lawyer. But at the point you start a business, it's time to start really setting aside money, investing in legal support, because the clarity around contracts, around IP, around what you're doing with your business, around compliance, and just overall protection really can match your stage of business and grow with you as your business grows. It will adjust. It will iterate. Like I was saying, we have 5 principles that are very high level. But when you go from a startup business or a newly formed business to now like a business that's pretty stable, that's now crossing multiple 6 figures, to a business that is now scaling past multiple 7 figures to then multiple 8 figures, your foundational principles adjust with more nuance to that business structure that now is different. And so your legal support, you want to grow with you and transition with you. It's not that you're going to have the same lawyer across the time, but you will have legal support that matches you across the time. And one of the things I think is really important for smaller business owners is to engage small law firms, right? Because they give you access to more accessible, more affordable, more widely available legal services. They don't necessarily charge by the hour. And if they do, go find someone who doesn't, because a flat fee and a subscription legal service is really a great fit for you as a creative. You can start small, you can grow over time. You might start at $100 a month and then get to $10,000 a month. And you're excited to pay $10,000 because you're making the money to support that $10,000 a month spend, right? And just like you do with every other part of your business, you invest in it. Marketing, content, finances, coaching. You don't DIY forever. And in fact, I would say in legal, be proactive with strategy as early as possible, and then add the DIY to the strategy, because then you have a guide, an expert, an experienced person to help you leverage that template better, leverage that the development of that policy better, helping you leverage their templates, even if they're not customizing something for you until you're ready for that customization. So get it early, get it fast, put a budget in place to make that work. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna speed past these last few because there's a kind of 2 hot topics that I wanted just to check in on. In the US, click to cancel next week, July 14th, unless they move back the date. A new law is coming in place. This might be already law of the land in other places across the world. So if it seems like, hey, we do this already, no worries. But first up with this click to cancel, if you are in the US or you work with customers in the US, so you may not be based there, if you are with customers and you sell courses, memberships, anything on a recurring or subscription basis, this goes live next week. And you have to adjust to make sure it's just as easy to sign up with you as it is to cancel. So if they can one-click sign up to become a part of your membership, they need to one-click sign up to get out of your membership, right? That means you need to go talk with, if this is something that you haven't dialed in, this might be your 1% action to dial in this week, to figure out what you need to do, because your payment processor may not do anything for you because that might not be something that they worry about. So you have to think through, what is my process to collect payment and what's my process to stop payment or letting them successfully unsubscribe without me having to intervene, right? It's a really important law. The penalties could be very steep. So you want to really be thinking about it right now if you do any recurring subscription-based revenue. The next hot topic, of course, is the implications of AI, particularly AI and intellectual property. In the United States, well, here's the thing. The law is slow to change with the world, and the AI is a prime example of it. Doesn't mean it's going to go away. It's going to still stay there. And in fact, we're all using it. I use AI, you use AI, but we have to be smart about it because it is changing everything from how we ideate, create, how we train, how we teach. But from the legal perspective, what I want you to remember is AI doesn't protect your work. In fact, it might destroy the protections that you have on your work if you're using AI improperly. So when you feed your original content into AI platforms, whether it's for brainstorming, summarizing, or designing, you may be exposing your intellectual property to reuse and retraining and redistribution that you didn't intend, right? So one of the quick tips is, pay for the platforms, because if you don't pay for it, you are the product, and everything you put in, they're using to train and improve. Second, if you do pay for the product, turn off retraining or use the products that don't retrain, right? There is big litigation in the United States. I don't always follow the international litigation, so there might be some of that happening too, but big litigation in the United States about, can these AI platforms, can these algorithms use people's copyrighted materials to help the Gen AI give out responses to all of us that are using it. It's a really big deal. And so we'll see what happens. The law is pretty slow to move, but we're all using it. And so you want to think through, what am I putting in right now? Everything you put in, even if you think you're deleting it, it's being saved. So you want to be thoughtful. And the final thing I also want to say with AI is that AI hallucinates, right? It makes up things. In the law, AI makes up case law, meaning it makes up statutes that don't exist. It makes up cases that don't exist. It makes up citations that don't exist. Lawyers have been sanctioned for writing improper briefs with AI produced statutes that are improper or cases that are improper. So do not rely on AI as your final work product. Use it for ideation, right? But not final work product. Know the platform's terms, read them, especially how they use your content and how it's stored, because that, you don't want to break your IP. If you're not comfortable, if you're not clear, if you're not reading it, stop putting your IP in there. Right? Not legal advice, of course, legal education. Be mindful about putting proprietary content into the tools you don't control, because you don't control them. AI does make things up, like I said, constantly. And so you want to protect against the hallucinations, like ideation, not final production. AI is a tool. It's not a shortcut to a strategy. And so if you have your strategy in place, it'll be a tool to amplify it, but it won't be where you start. So with that, let me wrap us up. I know I'm like almost at time at this point. What's your next step, right? What is your next step? The things I want you to thinking about. Okay, so first I have 3 next steps that we're going to go through high level real quick. First, audit what you have created and prioritize what you want to protect. First, you audit what you have, then you prioritize, right? Know what you have, know what's most important to you. Think through the 5 principles that we talked about when you're auditing it. But you want to get a sense of what names are you using, what materials have you created, can I protect this? Am I separating my business and my personal assets? Do I have my money separated? Am I managing my books? Just audit everything you've created, audit how you're operating, and then prioritize what you need, okay? Next up, let me move this so you can see a little bit better, is create your legal spending plan that fits your stage of business, right? So what I want you to be thinking about is when you are building your business, like, money matters. And I know people always say, well, no one tells me what to spend. Okay, I'm going to give you, this is me giving you a high level thought process about this. This is not the end all be all, but this is what I want you to think through as one of my final bonus questions. How much should I spend on legal? Okay, how much should you spend on legal? High level, think about 2 to 5% of your annual revenue is what you want to be thinking about spending on legal, right? $100,000, that's about $5,000 as a baseline. If you're rapidly accelerating, if you have a lot of IP, if you have issues that popped up, that's just going to go up more. But at minimum, you want to reserve that so you can do some of the initial things ahead of time so that you're not always scrambling to catch up. You want to be able to close that big deal. And it doesn't mean you need to have the most custom contract, but you might need to have someone to help you decide on what terms are good and what terms are bad, and have that conversation before you go sign an agreement that gives away all of your IP, all of your work, and gives you no royalty payments in the future, right? So 2 to 5% of your revenue is a target. It's something to think of. It's not the end all be all. You will adjust. You will see your legal spend, and then you will work it off trends. But your point of comparison when you're thinking about legal in your business is, what will it take to hire a full-time attorney to do this? You do not need a full-time attorney to way past 7 figures. So that's not something you're going to do when you're first starting out, but that's your point of comparison, right? It is like a team member in a fractional capacity. That's how you want to think about it. So 100 to 500,000, 2 to 25,000, 500 to a million, 20 to 50,000. Like these are real numbers to think about. These are numbers that clients have paid me, that I've paid attorneys, that I've coached and trained other people to do. You can get support at $100 a month. You might get support at $10,000 a month. You're different businesses doing different things, but the support and the strategy should still be aligned with your business, and that's what's important. And that's the final one. Choose legal support that aligns with your business model, because you want to have a legal professional that understands your business, that understands your small, that understands your lean, but can give you proactive, brand-aligned legal strategy to help you move and scale with less friction, to help you pivot when you need to pivot, to help you workshop, to be that other brain, that other strategist on your team that's bringing their legal expertise to help you solve business problems or to leverage new opportunities, right? You should look for people that do flat fee and subscription. Try to avoid hourly lawyers as much as possible, because those unforeseen bills are real, and you're obligated to pay them, right? And you don't want to be stuck with a bill that could be $20,000 when you thought it was going to be $500, right? And so look for those attorneys that can give you more predictability, more scoped work, so you can understand, okay, I'm going to first access your strategy, and then as I need additional work, I'm going to add a legal project on as needed that supports me. One project might be, can you review this template agreement that I have? Another project might be, can you help me search to see if my name is available? The next project could be, okay, can you help me file this trademark application? The next project could be, can you help me file this copyright application? You see where I'm going, right? You see where I'm going. So it's all about you taking your next step. So here you go. One of the things I just want to remind you, I am not currently actively taking any clients, but that doesn't mean that I'm not here to support you, right? So if you do want support on growing and scaling with legal professionals that are small and solo business aligned, that understand creatives, then click the QR code. It'll bring you to my email list. I am starting to share out more attorneys that are doing it. I will say we don't email as much anymore, so it won't be like everything that's always happening, but you'll stay up to date with new trainings and legal professionals that are selling and delivering subscription and flat fee services that are predictable, that help you build your business, protect your brand, and grow a team that helps you really scale your impact. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch on. I hope that you got answers to some questions. I hope it unlocked a few ahas. I hope it opened up some other things you need to be considering. Here are 2 additional resources that I always do like to share. They're not legal. They are just 2 resources to help you with mindset and intention. And the other one, money, because money impacts your bottom line. So it doesn't replace it. I profit first. I'm Caribbean descent. We've used envelope method for years. I loved percentages before I read Profit First, and now it just gave me some language to use. And Being is the New Doing is my top book to go from. If you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you can't just move through, it's a quick read, but it's a powerful read that you can continue to apply over and over again as you move through your leadership journey in your business. And so thank you. Oopsie. Thank you. I really appreciate each and every one of you sticking around with me, staying a little bit longer than I anticipated. I was running my mouth a little bit too much, but I so hope that, like I said, you were able to get a ton out of it. Again, let me make it clear. Here's a QR code again. You can find me across social at K Bennett Law. I love talking brand strategy, even though I'm not accepting any new clients. I still do consult on some brand strategy as needed. I do IP and impact training like we're doing now. We could talk about now me being a legal tech co-founder. So if you want to talk about starting an app, happy to do it, or just disrupting your legal industry, because that's what I'm doing in the legal industry. And I'm excited to see how y'all do it in your industry. And you can use that same QR code to get on my list, so you can be connected with other lawyers who are growing and scaling subscription and flat fee businesses that focus on creators. And if you want to just see what else is happening in the world of Kim, brand strategy, and being a tech co-founder. So let me come back up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the summit. Thank you for having me here. Enjoy the rest of your day.